Hello everyone and welcome back. We have another fun video today. This one's going to be a bit different because I was able to sit down with some of the devs behind Dawn of War 4 and ask them a few questions relating to the title. And before anything, I just want to say they were really open. Like, I asked 12 questions specifically and there was nothing thrown back at me saying, oh yeah, we can't answer that yet, or stuff like that, which is such a breath of fresh air. They were incredibly nice to talk to. I'm really excited to be able to share this video with you guys. I'm going to try to have everything's timestamped so you guys can skip to the questions that you want, but there is so much detail here, believe me. They answered as much as they could, and who knows, maybe in the future I can get another one when it's closer to launch. Like right now I know they're so busy with so many things, so we could only manage about 30 minutes, I think, but believe me, it is a fount of knowledge. So take it away, past Nathan and the awesome devs who were able to sit down and chat to me.
Wonderful. Okay, so hi, I'm Elliot. I am a senior game designer working at King Art Games. I've been with the studio now for a little bit over 6 years at this point, and I previously worked on their last release title, which was Iron Harvest. And then I'm going to pass the ball over to Jan.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jan. I'm one of the co-founders of King Art and the creative director and the game director of Dawn of War 4.
Cool. Where can I start now?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. It's always a bit awkward when
Feel free to kick it off.
So yeah, no, I've got a bunch of questions because I've managed to play and it's so fun. It is
Cool.
everything that I was hoping for. The
Good to
battles
hear.
feel great and so on. So I've just got a few questions if you guys can answer them. First up, obviously, is how did it end up with you guys taking up the mantle for Dawn of War? You know, this is a big title and so
Yeah.
on.
No, absolutely. I mean, a couple of years ago, we worked on Iron Harvest, our first RTS game, and that was the Kickstarter game, right? And so we were very open with the development. So we released a lot of behind-the-scenes material and showed off what we can do in terms of tech and visuals and so on. And someone at Games Workshop saw that probably, and out of nowhere, they asked us, if we would ever do a Dawn of War 4, what would you guys do? And I assume they did this with a lot of developers, right? And we basically came up with a concept, made a presentation. And for us, we thought, okay, it's already an honor to be asked, but this is probably it, right? Because realistically, we're a small developer developing our first RTS, and Dawn of War, as you said, is just, gigantic IP and like legendary RTS. But then, we released Iron Harvest and it worked well. And while we were working on the add-on, Games Workshop came back and said, okay, let's talk a little bit more. And we talked to Deep Silver, our publisher from Iron Harvest, and we basically said, okay, can we do like a little three-way here between us and make this happen? And that's how it went. And for us, it was huge honor and a big new step, of course.
That's awesome. That is absolutely awesome to hear. So the game is returning to classic RTS roots. Was that an easy decision? Because obviously we've had 3 games already for Dawn of War. They've all been kind of different.
Yeah. No, I mean, as I said, this is like the big thing, right? It's like when you think about let's make a new Dawn of War, what does this even mean, right? Because the first game and the second game, both of them great games, but very different. And so this was like the first thing we talked about. And for Iron Harvest, since it was a Kickstarter production, we were very close to the community and very close to, RTS fans. And we asked them a lot about, what do you like about the game and what would you make different, or, what would you like to see in the game in the future maybe? And a lot of feedback was around, this is great, play is cool, but it would also be great if we would have, bigger armies, or if we would have, more base building and, more fortifications, and all of that stuff. And so for us, relatively quickly, we said, okay, we feel like this is the way to go. Instead of going more in the Dawn of War 2 direction, let's go for Dawn of War 1 and basically make something like, a modern interpretation or like an evolution of Dawn of War 1. And that's basically what we set out to do, which doesn't mean, we obviously also looked at Dawn of War 2 and 3 and whatever we found might work for the game we wanted to make. We absolutely used that. But Dawn of War 1 became our guiding star, and we said, okay, what we're really aiming for is the feel of Dawn of War 1.
That's awesome. It's really comforting to hear devs saying that they listen to the community. I think that's really important, especially when it comes to like Warhammer games where there's a lot of expectations.
Yeah. I mean, that's also, of course, true, right? There is not like one opinion in the community, right? It's not like, well, this is what the community wants and nothing else. There will be always discussions, but I think it's good to basically keep an ear open and also keep open for suggestions. And there might be some things where we feel strongly about that we say, no, this wouldn't work, right? But there might be other stuff where we feel like, okay, this is actually a good idea. Maybe we can actually implement this. And this is actually one of the things we want to do in the future. Now that the game finally is announced and we can talk about it, we want to make sure that we get people from the community on board and have them play the game early on and get their feedback. Because, I mean, first of all, for, the ideas and, is everything going in the right direction? But also, of course, since we have 4 factions and they are all asymmetrical, and it's a lot of units, it's just impossible to basically balance that without a lot of players playing the game and giving feedback and finding all these weird, combinations and all these weird ways to cheese and to break the game. And so this is definitely something we want to do and bring the community on board.
That's awesome. So let's talk about the battle. So I managed to play one battle through the build that you guys sent over. It was fantastic. It feels like Dawn of War 1, but it's got like some quality of life from Dawn of War 2. In terms of line of sight, it felt great. Melee was awesome. I'm not much of a melee player myself. Like on the tabletop, I main Tau. But how did it go about making the battle so fluid? Because honestly, it's obviously it's a early build, but it still feels fantastic from what I've been able to play.
Yeah, cool. Nice. That's good to hear. I mean, it's a super complex topic, of course, right? Because, I mean, we have, as I said, a lot of different units, and we wanted to make sure that, not only the factions feel very distinct, but then within a faction, the units should feel distinct, and all of them have, their own specific role, right? And if you get Terminators, for example, people have something in mind how a Terminator should look and feel and behave and so on. But of course, we can't make every unit like overpowered and indestructible and super awesome. Then still needs to be a way to actually counter this unit or to to play against them. And so for us, it became this big or one of the big questions was, how can we make sure that it is more than just statistics, right? It's more than just, okay, a big group of units fights another big group of units, but what can you do as a player to really influence the outcome of the battle, right? Mm-hmm. And what we came up with, among other things, is that we said, okay, actually this melee versus range stuff is very important. If you have ranged units in a battle and, they can reach a lot of different targets in the battle, of course, and if they just pump out the damage the whole time, they do a lot of damage all the time. And so one of the big things you really want to do is you want to try to get your melee units into the grill of the enemy's ranged units, so that the ranged units are getting taken out of the battle a little bit. And of course, the enemy tries the same thing. So you try to defend your ranged units, and that becomes very dynamic, right? Because all of a sudden you have this thing where there is a big incentive to go through his battle line and try to get in the enemy's backline a little bit, and the enemy tries to make sure that you can't do that, right? And so it becomes like a very dynamic kind of battle, and I think it works very well.
Yeah, it felt good.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we wanted to emphasize for Dawn of War 4 is it's a very common pitfall for lots of teams to try and design multiplayer in a way that you kind of accidentally balance the fun out of a lot of the aspects of whatever faction you play. So we, of course, want to make sure that we have balanced multiplayer modes, but we definitely have as like a key aspect of when we go into designing a faction or designing an array of units for factions that the coolest faction that is out there right now is the one you're playing at this moment, especially for something like the campaigns, for example. That's something we really wanted to emphasize and drive that point home for players. Of course, everyone has their preference for whatever their favorite faction is, but that's something that we really wanted to bring home, is that we want to make sure that things are balanced, but ensure that we have a lot of those fun aspects that makes the world of Warhammer 40,000 so vivid and resonates with players.
Awesome.
There's actually one other thing, maybe to just add to this. You know, we looked a lot, obviously, on Dawn of War 1 or at Dawn of War 1 and tried to figure out, you know, how did the game work, but more in this, the idea was more like, you know, when we played the game 20 years ago, right, it made us feel certain things. And the question is, how can we make sure that a game 20 years later invokes the same feelings and you know, feels similar? Because what you can't really do is just take the stuff that worked 20 years ago, put it in the modern game, and you know, expect that this is actually working. But what you have to do is basically you have to figure out, okay, what is the essence of the game, right? And how can we basically bring this essence back with Dawn of War 4? And so what we did, for example, was when it comes to combat, one of the big things for combat in Dawn of War 1 was always that combat could be relatively drawn out, right? There could be a battle that took a while. It's not like you go there and it's fast, time to kill, and then, you know, you go to the next point. But it was a little bit like, if I really wanted to, you know, I can really make sure that I don't lose this point, right? Because I can invest resources and I can bring units back and I can heal them, you know, and then I can bring in reinforcements and so on, right? And so if I really want, I can maybe win the battle, but then I might lose the war, right? Because I invested so many resources in this one battle. And this, for example, is something that we also try to bring back, that you basically, you know, you have to decide, okay, how important is this actually for me, right? Do I really want to hold this point, or is it actually maybe better to retreat and do another attack? And, you know, so this interplay between battles and economy, I think, is very important.
Yeah. And that's definitely something that we expand upon, not just only with where do you put resources in for a particular fight, but also what kind of units you upgrade where and when. So all those kind of smaller decisions essentially all build up to this larger strategic depth that we're looking for.
Sweet. Honestly, it's all sounding really, really good. Let's continue over here. So we're doing a little bit of everything because, like, it's battles, it's lore, and a bit of everything. I just wanted to get as much in possible.
Sure,
so without going into spoilers, wedding back to a planet that we've seen before, was this something that you guys always wanted to do, or is it just something that came into latent development?
Yeah. No, I mean, we have like a background in narrative games, right? And also for Iron Harvest, the campaign was like very important for us, and it's maybe the part of the game that was, you know, that people maybe like the most, right? And so basically we said, okay, campaigns, that's definitely super important for us. And early on, we came up with this idea that maybe instead of just having a Space Marine campaign or having a campaign where all of the factions, you know, have little bits and pieces, actually let's make, you know, one big campaign for each of the factions. And when we had that locked down, you know, then we thought, okay, maybe within the campaigns, maybe we can even have decisions, right? And maybe we have non-linearity, and maybe there are optional missions, and you can, you know, do the one thing or the other thing, and maybe that has consequences later on. And, you know, having all of these ideas, you know, then, okay, it was pretty clear we need something like, you know, a world map where you can see multiple missions at the same time, where there can be, you know, world map dialogues where different people talking to each other, and then now there's a new mission here, and because you did this mission is now gone, you know, and stuff like that. And then, okay, we knew, okay, we need a planet, right? And then we basically said, okay, wouldn't it be cool to basically go back to one of the planets that people already know? And then Games Workshop suggested to basically go to Kronos, because the Great Rift opened up, and Kronos is, you know, on the wrong side, basically. And that also gave us the opportunity to put some pressure on the Blood Ravens, right? Because they are also on the wrong side. They have been scattered, right? And there is no communication. Nobody really knows who is still alive or who's not. And we tell the story of Cyrus and Jonah, and how they arrive at Kronos and what happens there. And they basically hope to find maybe brothers there, or hope to maybe find new recruits to kind of rebuild the chapter a little bit. But of course, it's 40K, so everything goes horribly wrong, and that's basically the story of the game.
Sweet, sweet. So speaking about characters, it's great to see Cyrus and Gorguts back. Put it as a hint rather as a spoiler. Any other returning characters we could expect, or?
So there's actually a funny thing about this, is that not only do we have Cyrus and Gorguts returning, we also have their original voice actors coming back from the previous installments coming from here. As far as I know, like Jonah Orion is returning as well, of course. But otherwise, I don't want to give away too much of the story, but as Jan said, things don't go all too well, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yeah, I mean, that are the 3 returning characters, but overall we have, I think, 10, 11, 12 maybe, like named characters, playable characters in the game. Most of them are new, but at least these 3 are, old acquaintances.
It's good to see some new faces too.
Yeah. So
let's talk about the Ad Mech. So totally new. Everyone's like, I'm imagining everyone's going to be asking a lot of questions. A few units pop up in the demo. How does this faction kind of play? If you can give us a little bit of info.
Yeah, sure. I mean, maybe first. Oh, sorry. Do you want Elliot?
Yeah, sure, I can take this.
Okay.
So the Adeptus Mechanicus, they primarily play around connectivity and the sharing of data, as you would expect from this particular faction. So they leverage what we call in the game, we call the noospheric network, which is kind of an area of effect that they can use in combination with how they place their particular base building, so to speak, and they can leverage that for additional buffs for their units and their own structures. So they have to be a little bit more considerate about how exactly they expand and build upon their own base in comparison to like orcs, for example, where they just want to build their buildings willy-nilly all over the map. Adeptus Mechanicus have to be a little bit more thoughtful about that, but they do gain quite a bit of advantages from if they manage to pull that off correctly. We talked a little bit about it also in the preview that, they have the ability to kind of read enemy movements within the fog of war, so that also gives them a bit of information with which that they can play around with and potentially outmaneuver their opponents.
Right. It's basically about, connecting your buildings and connect or build like a connected base. And if you imagine in many matches, you go out quickly to maybe capture resource points and so on, and then you maybe want to defend the resource points with turrets and so on. And these turrets, would be a lot stronger if they would be part of the network, right? So as an Ad Mech player, you might then in the next step think about, okay, can I actually connect these, right? Is it worth basically building a connection between my main base and these turrets, because the turrets would be much more powerful, or maybe I could also just build more turrets, right? And then as the opposing player, of course, it's like, if you want to attack a position that is very well connected, it's going to hurt, but maybe you can actually, instead of attacking the position, you could attack the connections, right? And then all of a sudden you have maybe not one big network anymore, but you have islands, and now it's much easier to pick out the islands. So that is like the core idea.
Awesome. That actually sounds really, really cool.
Yeah, cool. Okay.
So we've seen like the orcs in the battle and so on, where a lot of their units can construct and build up from there. The Necrons are one that I'm curious about, because they totally took me by surprise when they spawned in. How are they going to play? Is it going to be very similar to how they were in the past, or is it radically different, or is it going to be a bit of a mishmash?
Yeah. I mean, Necrons for us is all about like slow expansion, right? So basically, they really want to basically grow their domain, right? Because as long as Necrons are on their home turf, so to speak, they get certain bonuses, including living metal and self-healing that is a lot stronger than outside of this matrix. And so what you basically do is you start small, and then you start pushing outwards. You're building more buildings, you're building your infrastructure and your defenses. And as an opponent, you really don't want them to, you don't want them to keep expanding, basically, right? Because if you do that at some point, they just become so powerful because also their resource acquisition is linked to the area that they control, right? And so they at some point would become unstoppable if you don't try to stop them early. The big disadvantage is that they're relatively slow. There are a lot of slow units there, but eventually, they get various options to basically teleport over the map. So what you can do, for example, is you can build a Tomb Spider. The Tomb Spider can build like a secondary HQ, if you like, and then the main HQ and that HQ is actually connected. So you can send units into the main HQ that then pop out from the secondary HQ. And of course, then you can bridge large distances. Or you can have the monolith, and the monolith can teleport itself, and then it also becomes like a endpoint in this teleportation network, right? So theoretically, you can teleport a monolith in the enemy base, and then all of a sudden, 5 other Necron units pop up, stuff like that. And then, of course, we have a little bit of the resurrection shenanigans with the Necrons as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, in many ways, the Necron play style kind of mirrors that of the Adeptus Mechanicus, where the Adeptus Mechanicus want to kind of keep very compact bases that are very closely interconnected with each other. The Necrons want to spread their realm far and wide because that is what gives them the most power. But of course, that comes at the potential cost of keeping that if they have slower units. But as Jan said, they have different ways to be able to compensate for that.
That's awesome. That honestly sounds really, really exciting. Let me see here. Okay, this one, I'm pretty hyped up about an army painter. I know a lot of people might not be too hyped about that, but I love it. I use army painters as a reference. I used to use the original Dawn of War 1 as a reference to painting my own minis. So any features, how is it going to be? Is it going to be quite detailed? Because obviously the Dawn of War 1 one is kind of limited.
Is it? Yeah. We're not talking about that yet. All I can say is, since there were army painters in all the Dawn of War games, of course, there will be a painter in Dawn of War 4 as well. And, we are 20 years ahead now, right? So maybe there's more options now.
That sounds comforting. That sounds very, very comforting. So the Imperial Guard show up, and obviously you might not be able to talk about this just yet, but it makes me think about the potential future. Have you guys thought about potential DLC plans without saying what that DLC, if there's DLC, could be?
Yeah, at the moment, we're focusing on getting the main game done, right? Because it's already, a monster. I think we have something like 110 or more than that units and buildings in the game, right? And many of them have different weapon loadouts and upgrades and all of that. And so, we are focusing on getting that stuff done and as cool as possible. And as soon as we have that, then we think about the next steps.
That's very, very fair. That's very, very fair. Now, I've got perhaps the most important question, because lore fans, I think, would want to know this. There's no backflipping Terminators, is there?
Would that be a problem? Maybe we have to talk to the animators. No, obviously not. Even if we wanted to, I think Games Workshop wouldn't allow something like that anymore. But also, we don't want to, of course, because for us, one of the big pillars was really, okay, we want to make sure that the game looks and feels right? So it really has to be 40K, and it has to be grimdark, and we want the factions to feel like the factions and the units like the units, right? And that was one of the big pillars for us. And so obviously we make sure that Terminators behave like Terminators.
Very good. I had to sneak that question in some way.
That's fine.
So is there a rough ballpark on how many maps we can expect? A lot of people like as many battles as possible. So this would be just even for just skirmish mode and so on.
Yeah. We have, of course, the campaign, which will be, depending on how you play, more or fewer maps, and you can't actually play all the missions in one playthrough because there are some mutually exclusive maps. And it's a beast. I'm not sure what it is actually, but it's dozens and dozens of maps. We have skirmish with many maps. We have multiplayer, of course. You can play the campaign also in co-op if you want, and skirmish as well, of course. And we also bring back Last Stand. So with day one, there will be the Last Stand mode where you can play with your heroes, and in our version, heroes plus a few additional units. And basically, I think, in terms of content, it's for sure the biggest Dawn of War at launch.
Awesome, awesome. So I've got one final question. It's what's the max amount of players that you can have, say, in a multiplayer game for one big battle? And that would also kind of ask around, like, what's the largest map also? Because, like, the battle I played is for, I think, it's a free-player map, and it's already really large, which was really, really impressive.
Yeah. Well, I would say the map you played is probably like medium to large size map, I would say, but by no means a really big one. It's 3 versus 3, so 6 player is the maximum. But the maps, can be quite big. I mean, we have everything from really almost like arena maps all the way to huge battlefields.
That's awesome, because I've seen it a lot with like the community. Some people would post like what they've done in Dawn of War 1 as like a narrative report on like the Reddit threads and so on. So, I'm thinking about that in the future type of thing, because like I myself love big battles, right?
Yeah.
And already with this battle that I played, it was already fairly large. I managed to get quite a lot of Space Marines on the field. It felt great. It's just it made me want to go back and paint up 2 Redemptor Dreadnoughts that I've got still.
No, I mean, it's actually in terms of technology, we can do stuff with the Dawn of War 4 engine that wouldn't be possible with the Iron Harvest engine, and so we had big battles in mind, and there are definitely much bigger battles, or you can do much bigger battles than you did in the demo.
So that's everything that I was able to ask the devs. The rest of the recording was basically me just saying thank you over and over again, because I did really have a lot of fun playing that build, and I can't wait to play again. Hopefully, the next time I get to play, it'll be nice to check out some of the other factions, because I like the Necrons, I like the Ad Mech. I mean, I like the Orcs too. It's just very hard to say that you don't like many factions in the 40k universe, But yeah, let me know what you guys think about everything that's been said in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. There is a lot of information here. And I mean, I hope you guys are hyped up, because I sure as hell am. Have a great day, guys. I'll see you all again very, very soon.